Good morning, Bucknutters. Welcome to the Bucknuts Morning 5 here on Friday, October 12, 2018. I am Dave Biddle. I'm very happy to be joined by a good friend of mine and a good friend of the website. He is, of course, Mark Neal. Mark was the host of Dayton Sports Scene on 1410 ESPN Radio for several years. He started that show. He was also the host of Bucknuts Live each Sunday, started that show along with Dan Rubin. Mark moved to Minneapolis, Minnesota earlier this year, and it was a good opportunity for him and his wife. And buddy, it is great to have you on the show. Welcome in, Mark.
Thank you, Dave. It's nice to be back. I'm certainly on Bucknuts all the time, so it's good to be back on a show that I've been on a few times and talking with a guy that I've talked to for countless amount of times in my life. So good to talk to you.
It's already surreal that I'm the one asking you the questions after years of you being the one interviewing me. This is already I was excited, but I didn't even think about the surreal part of this. Like, oh yeah, like I'm interviewing Mark, not the other way around. But let's get right into it. I know I didn't want to say from afar what you think of the Buckeyes, but I know you keep very, very, very close tabs on this team, just like anybody does that lives out of state that loves the Buckeyes. Obviously, right now Ohio State's 6-0, right, number 3 in the country. So from your vantage point, Mr. Neal, just what are your thoughts on how Ohio State's season is going so far?
I think that this is kind of a unique team for Urban Meyer, except for the fact that this team in some ways, not every way, but in some ways, namely offensively, reminds me of the 2014 team, at least certainly late in the season. I mean, with the emergence of what Campbell and Hill and McLaren and Dixon and these guys are doing in the passing game, reminds me a lot of what Spencer and Smith and Thomas were doing in the passing game. That team had a passer like Cardale Jones, who was not your typical Urban Meyer quarterback. I mean, when you think about Urban Meyer quarterbacks, Cardale Jones is not going to be on that list. Dwayne Haskins really isn't either. If you think about a running quarterback, that's just not his style. Dwayne Haskins is more of a pro-style QB, and I think it's made this offense much more potent in the passing game, obviously. I mean, they're just dangerous in the passing game. They can still run the football. The deficiencies this year, as everyone can see, are on the defensive side, namely the back seven. When you've had the losses, Dave, that they've had, think about the lineage of the number one corner going back to Brad Roby, and you're talking the Lattimores, the Wards, the Apples, just on and on and on. Eventually, that's gonna tap out a little bit, not completely, but a little bit. This team's had their own deficiencies trying to stop, people in the passing game. Big plays have happened. That's stuff that you can shore up. If you talk about things that you're worried about, a team that has a propensity to give up the big play, I think that can be worked on. So I think the deficiencies that they have are things that can improve by the time this schedule amps up with Michigan State, Michigan, a potential Big Ten title game, and after.
Dwayne Haskins has been, even better than advertised, and he was advertised quite well throughout the offseason. We thought he was going to have a great year, and he's having an even better year than I thought he was going to have, and I was super high on him. So it's interesting. It's not bittersweet because it's certainly just mostly sweet that he's just this good. But there is the thought that he's going to be one and done, isn't he? And right now, if I had to guess, yeah, it's looking that way. We've mentioned that in the boarding house. Things can change, and he's some people are saying he's not playing as well as we think. Pro Football Focus raised a fuss on our site when they said that Alex Hornibrook's actually grading out better so far this season than Dwayne Haskins. I tend to think that's going to change by the end of the year. Yeah, that has to change by the end of the year. I think Wisconsin just really hasn't played anybody that tough. Iowa on the road is tough, obviously, as we know. I hate to bring that up, but just Haskins being one and done. Your thoughts on Dwayne Haskins, and do you think he will be one and done?
Well, that really depends on what happens in these last 6 games. I think in today's world, when you have rookie contracts that you've got to deal with, and some of these guys can't deal with their rookie contract if they start playing too well, you need to leave when your stock is at its greatest level. And if Dwayne Haskins has got a team that's saying, if you are in this draft, we will take you somewhere mid-first round, high first round, you got to go. Do I think Dwayne Haskins could benefit from another year in college? Absolutely. Right now he's a guy that looks like a quarterback. He's like, I'm just going to throw this ball so hard it sticks in his chest or his face mask. He's got some touch that he could work on, and you develop your game in college and you display your game in the pros. I think guys that are like, I'm going to go now and I'm going to finish developing when I get to a pro team, they don't have time for you to develop too much. You need to be ready to perform. So college, if you're like, I want to focus on getting better, college is where you do that out, in my opinion. I know you get pro coaches and all that stuff, but I think that they're more patient with you with that kind of thing in college, because that's what college is meant to be. Dwayne Haskins has got some things to work on. Most everybody that gets drafted into the NFL has things to work on too. I think it really depends, Dave, and I hate to couch it this way, how this season wraps up, because that's the games we're going to remember. When Mel's running his tape, it's going to be stuff from the Michigan State game, Michigan game, a potential Big Ten title game against Wisconsin, and so on. They're not going to show too many highlights from the Oregon State whipping. They're just not. I think the jury is still out on what Haskins can do, because they want to see him do it against better teams. Now, they play good ones. They've had 2 great games against TCU and Penn State, but I think they want to see more. So I don't really know. I think that he has I think I'd be leaning towards he comes back next year, but he certainly could go pro. That's a really tough question.
And you answered it extremely well. I thought you just nailed it. I mean, I agree with you on all points. Very well said. Switching gears, I have to ask you about this. This is just a topic. It's not comfortable, but it's a very huge topic in Buckeye Nation right now. Just your thoughts on Urban Meyer's health issue and how much longer you expect Urban will stay at Ohio State. And yes, I know I'm asking you to guess here, but just what are your thoughts on that?
I think Urban will stay as long as he can. I just don't think Urban is ready to go somewhere else. I think he's happy. I think he likes living in Columbus. From an outsider's perspective, I think he's happy there. I'm pretty sure his wife is as well. They're Ohio people. Ohio people are Ohio people, and you like Ohio. Columbus is a great city. That's a great job. So I think he'll stick at that job. I don't think it's like, he might take the Notre Dame job. I don't. Unless he has to leave Ohio State and wants to get back into coaching, that would be the only thing. But if it's up to him, I think he stays. I think he stays for a good while. This health thing, nobody was saying squat about this 2 weeks ago until all of a sudden he's got some massive headache apparently. I don't know how that came on so fast. But I think that his health will be probably a weighing factor. He's still a young man, relatively speaking. But I don't think he leaves for another job. He's got as good a job as you're going to get in college football. He might have one of the top 2 or 3 jobs in any level of football. So it would be a dramatic health thing for him to leave. It wouldn't be going to the NFL. It wouldn't be going back to a school like a Florida or something like that. So I think he's around, I would say, at least another 4 or 5 years, in my opinion. If Saban's going to sign up for that, and he's in his mid-60s, I think Urban Meyer can do that.
Yeah, I agree that there's no way he's going to leave for another job. He's another coaching job. He's going to stay at Ohio State till he retires from coaching, in my opinion. Okay, this is really interesting to me. Let's say Urban steps down in a couple of years. Coaches the rest of this year, then maybe 2 more years after that, so 2.5 years. And let's say Ryan Day does stick around that long. Would you be okay with Ryan Day just automatically at that point being the successor to Urban Meyer, or would you want there to be a national? I guess it depends on how Ryan Day looks more. This is just his second year on the staff. We have 3 games of him being the head coach, 2 of which you and I could have won as the head coach. Let's just be frank about it. Would you be okay with, after a couple of years, them just promoting Ryan Day, or would you like to see a national search for a new head coach?
It really depends on what Ryan Day becomes. Bob Stoops leaves and they slide Lincoln Riley in. I'd take Lincoln Riley. Lincoln Riley is incredible. I think he could go to the NFL and be successful. I think he can go to college and be successful. So if Ryan Day ends up being the wonder kind, like a Lincoln Riley, then certainly. But Ohio State, and I know big programs have done this, Dave, which is funny to me, like Texas and Florida State. major programs. Even in basketball, they do this with schools like Syracuse and UConn, big-time programs where they name a successive coach. Why? If you're Ohio State, you can get anybody you want just about to come and coach here. I wouldn't say, hey, we're gonna hire from within. Companies that don't look past the hallway when they make a hire probably have a less percentage of a good hire than a company that's willing to look wherever. So to me, it just really depends on what Ryan Day becomes. He coached 3 games here. Is he a great coach? I'm not one to speak on that. I'd love to have you guys to talk to like former players and say, if we had like an Ohio State coaches draft, who would be the first pick and so on? How long until we get to Ryan Day in this mix? Is he the best coach on the staff outside of Urban? I think those are all wonderful questions to find out. But right now, with that job being what that job is, you don't need to secure anything. You're the best-looking girl in the bar. You don't need to claim somebody as soon as they walk in the door.
I love that analogy. Yeah, and I really like Ryan Day. I just feel like we don't know enough yet at this point to say, yep, he's the guy. This isn't Arkansas, not to throw them under the bus. Okay, I guess I threw them under the bus. This is Ohio State. Speaking of coaches, what's the feeling? It's just his second year there. What's the feeling on P.J. Fleck in your neck of the woods there, your new neck of the woods there in Minnesota?
Well, I'll tell you something interesting, and we all know why, but still, the Gophers up here, when it comes to media, sports radio, things like that, get very little run. Of course, this team has a sports team in every league, a pro team. So, there's NFL, Major League Baseball, there's an NBA and WNBA team. Of course, hockey is enormous up here. So the Gophers have got a lot of competition, but they are on the opposite end of the spectrum when it comes to chatter from what the Buckeyes get in Ohio, certainly. The patience is certainly there with PJ. I think they can see where PJ is going to do them some good. But I look at this year, I think they need to be prepared for a season like they had last year. Last year they finished 5-7. They started off 3-0 in the non-conference, won 2 games in the Big Ten, and that could be what we have again this year. They started off 3-0 in the non-conference. They lost their first 2 Big Ten games, including the big Floyd of Rosedale loss last week against Iowa. Now they get the Buckeyes. I think we're all assuming that's a loss. So that puts them at 3-3. I think that this program sees that they're starting to climb. They're playing a lot of young players. In fact, they're playing a walk-on true freshman at quarterback in Zach Anixted, who's from the Twin Cities. So they're playing a lot of young players. Subsequently, their offense is garbage. Thankfully, Rutgers is there to keep them from the basement. Rutgers is the old staircase, the only thing between Minnesota and the basement, really, in the Big Ten when it comes to offense. But the defense has played well. I think PJ is saying, I'm going to lose now with my guys to be better in 2 years, which is probably how I would try to do it, too, if I was him. This is a tough job. Because half the state lives where I'm at. I live in Minneapolis. Half the state lives in Twin Cities. And football is only, so big. There's a lot of football talent, but not a lot of football talent, if you know what I mean. So it's a tough job. PJ's going to have to stretch himself out when it comes to recruiting. I think they're all in with him, and they should be. He's still one of the bright young minds in college football as far as I'm concerned. Brings a lot of energy, as we all know. But they're going to have to get over that hump. They need that big win in the conference. Last year they beat Illinois and Nebraska in the Big Ten. This year, a game like Wisconsin might be their best chance to get a win, even though it's on the road, to get a win that they can really rally behind. Otherwise, it's a host of Nebraska, Indiana, Illinois, Purdue, Northwestern, etc. But Gopher fans, I think, are excited for what PJ can bring. But right now, this is the awkward stage, Dave. You're growing your hair out, and right now it looks like a bowl cut. So they just got to be patient for a little while.
Buckeyes, Golden Gophers, high noon tomorrow here in Columbus, high noon Eastern. 11 a.m. for you, Mr. Neal. Game will be televised on Fox Sports 1. I know, isn't that nice? I've heard people have done, like I know our friends at Awful Announcing, Ben Koo, a Buckeye, owns that site. They did like a a survey on what's the best time zone to live in for sports, and the winner was the Central Time Zone.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, NFL starts at noon. College football games are on at 11. You can watch that late game, and it's not 1 o'clock. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I'd be okay if Ohio moved to Central Time just for that reason, just for my sports habits. So tomorrow's game, televised by Fox Sports 1, Buckeyes favored by 30 last time I checked. Just how do you see this one playing out? Do you think the Gophers can even hang with them for a little bit?
I think so. This is an opponent that, of course, Ohio State used to play annually when the Big Ten did those type of things. Now it seems like we don't see them that often. I think they come here. Is it next year they come here?
I think Ohio State goes there next year.
Yeah, I think they do, and then they don't play again until maybe 2024 or something like that. But anyway, I think Ohio State puts it on Minnesota. Minnesota's going to have big-time trouble moving the football. Ohio State's going to put pressure on that true freshman quarterback. This is going to be far and away the biggest test for the Gophers, and I think it's going to be a little bit overwhelming, especially at the Horseshoe. I think Ohio State names their score in parts of this game, really. This is, to me, this is going to be a type of game where we're going to see a lot of guys coming in late to play. Minnesota's just going to get overwhelmed. I think they are on the right trajectory, but that trajectory is not something that's going to be able to hang too long with Ohio State. So I say the Buckeyes score in the really high 40s or mid to lower 50s, and Minnesota maybe gets 13.
And by the way, we completely lied. Buckeyes do not play at Minnesota next year. They don't even play at Minnesota the following year. They don't play Minnesota again until 2021 when they go at Minnesota. So,
I knew that they played them coming up because I was looking at schedules last night, future schedules for the Buckeyes, but I thought for some reason they came here next year. But anyway, that just shows you how rarely these two play, and these two used to play all the time.
Yeah, it really did. Hey, before I let you go, real quick, I want to end on a basketball note. I know we're in the midst of football season, and that's what I'm all about right now, too. But, Big Ten Basketball Media Day was held yesterday in Chicago. The Athletic did an interesting poll amongst beat writers, and Ohio State is picked to finish 8th in the Big Ten, according to that poll. This is Chris Holtman's second year at the helm. Michigan State was picked number 1, Michigan number 2, Indiana number 3. Mark, what do you expect from the basketball Buckeyes this season? Does 8th in the conference sound about right? I was thinking more like 5th or 6th.
I think that this is going to be kind of a regather yourself kind of season. You lose Keita, you lose Jay Sean, you lost over 30 points of offense right there with just those two. I love Caleb Wesson. I think Caleb Wesson is the ideal college center because he's big enough to be impactful inside, but not tall enough where he might leave after 1 or 2 years. But yet he can be all conference. You get C.J. Jackson back for a little bit of balance in the backcourt. They got a lot of young players. I think some of that, Dave, is because they don't know what to expect out of some of the guys and how this group will congeal. A lot of those preseason markings are based on what's coming back, who's coming back, and stuff like that. And I'll tell you another thing, and people used to beat me up, especially on that website of yours. Ohio State basketball is important, I think, but it's definitely somewhere deep in the back seat of Buckeye fandom. So I just think that there's something about that program where people aren't just like, oh, well, it's Ohio State. We know they're going to be good. I think Chris Holtman could get that program to that level because I think Thad got that to that level. But you need to put some good years back to back before people are like, well, it's Ohio State. They'll figure it out. The benefit of the doubt, if you will, like Michigan State gets. I think Michigan State gets a lot of benefit of the doubt. They're like, well, we don't know much about this team, but we know Michigan State. We know Tom Izzo. He'll get this thing going. And I think eventually Chris Holtman, with all these recruiting classes he's pulling in and everything like that, and they're going to get more and more backing on campus, fans and stuff like that, more and more attention going to them. And once they do, I think these kind of rankings are just going to say, well, Chris Holtman will probably get a good team out there, and you'll see that ranking probably go up as years go forward.
Great having you on the show, man. It's been great just hearing your voice and just chatting with you. I really appreciate your time, buddy.
Thank you. Great to be on. I miss all the Bucknutters. Love doing Bucknuts Live. I loved having you on. I never expected that show Bax and I started 7 years ago would ever have morphed into what it is, and it was great to be a part of it all those years, and certainly miss my fam on Bucknuts.com.
I forgot. It's been so long. I forgot it was you and Bax originally. That's right. I forgot about Bax driving down. I think that lasted about like a couple of months. We're Bax, and then Bax got sick of driving down every Sunday. But hey, man,
Bax started
the show. Go ahead.
He started having kids. That was the issue.
I know a little something about that. That will change your life. You're going to have a little bit less free time, just a little bit. He is Mark Neal, of course. Really appreciate it, Mark, and I appreciate all the listeners out there for tuning in to the show. Thank you so much. I hope everybody has a great day and a great weekend. Let's hear that Buckeye Swag, best damn band in the land.